Welcome to another divorce recovery session. The title of this session is Dealing with Depression. Unfortunately, this is a reality for almost anyone that goes through separation or divorce. And it's something that is one of the most difficult things we have to deal with. That's why I think it is worthy of a specific session. And we're going to try to answer some simple questions. We're going to talk about the symptoms of depression. We're going to talk about the causes of depression, explore a little bit the nature of depression, and finally, hopefully, offer some potential solutions to dealing with depression. First, let's just look at the simple symptoms of depression. Typically, we're feeling sad, we look downcast, we're dejected, oftentimes tired. Depression makes us feel tired all the time. And then one of the key elements of it is negative thinking. It's just that any attempt to try to think positively about ourselves or our life or about anything becomes difficult when we're depressed. It's a constant loop of negative thinking, and this can be quite overwhelming. We feel powerless. We tend to have a very poor concept of ourselves. We perhaps blame ourselves for the divorce. We feel like that no one's going to love me since I've been rejected by my partner. There are also physical symptoms. Usually severe depression is accompanied by a change in eating or sleeping habits. It can go either way. You can, on one hand, not be hungry at all, stop eating or eat very little compared to what you normally eat. Or the other extreme, you can try to soothe yourself with comfort food by eating to excess. And then sleeping is the same way. For some people going through depression, they can't sleep hardly at all. They've normally slept 7 to 8 hours. All of a sudden, they can't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours without waking up and not being able to go back to sleep. Or the other extreme. They normally sleep 7 to 8 hours. Now, all of a sudden, they're sleeping 9, 10, 11, 12 hours, and they're still not rested at the end of that. So, these are outward symptoms that we're depressed that we need to be aware of. Anxiety oftentimes accompanies depression. We're restless, agitated, perhaps easily upset. All these things are potential symptoms that we are depressed. Now, the cause of depression is usually 80% of our depressions or what we would call situational depression. In other words, you lose a job. And in this particular case, we're talking about the loss of a relationship. And as a result of that situation, this is not what you signed up for. This is not what you thought would be the end result of your relationship. And so as a result of that, you feel very depressed, very sad. This is not what you would wish on anyone, much less yourself. And so if you're depressed for a while, or as you're going through the separation divorce process, it's only normal to have periodic moments in which you're sad, in which you're discouraged, in which you're dejected. But then it shouldn't be a dominant theme for your whole day. However, if you find yourself, 24/7 depressed and dejected, and this lasts for 2 or 3 weeks, now you may be dealing with something beyond just the normal depression that we all experience based on unfortunate and difficult, stressful circumstances we go through in our lives. This is a clinical depression. A clinical depression simply means that This is no longer a merely psychological depression. Instead, what you're experiencing has become a chemical circumstance. In other words, your chemicals within your body have changed. And once you're in a clinical depression, it can run a cycle of months and years unless it's treated medically. So even if your depression, because of your separation divorce, begins as a normal type depressive feeling, if you get into this very deep and unrelenting depression, your body breaks down. And it can go from a normal depression to a clinical depression fairly quickly. And so if you find yourself for 2 or 3 weeks locked in a deep depressed state, the best thing you can do is contact your doctor and seek some medical help. The good news about that is that today 80 to 85% of depression can be treated with medicine. We have good medicines today that don't have very many side effects. Depression is such a common situation, almost any doctor can help you. Of course, recognize the specialists on this are psychiatrists, and they would be, of course, the best ones to see because that's what they specialize in. But the point of all this is that it's normal for us to be depressed when we go through the loss of a significant relationship. But if we get stuck in a clinical depression, just trying to think happy thoughts or just thinking it'll go away over time is not necessarily the case. A person can get locked into a chemical imbalance that can last, like I said, for months, but it can also last for years unless it's treated. And the good news, as I said, is most of our depression can be treated. And so don't be the person that's reticent to deal with the only thing that might help you out of a deep depression by being willing to take medicine for that purpose. Now, some of us have, I throw one more in besides the clinical and the situational depression, some of us have to deal with chronic depression. And usually this goes back into our childhood. Periodically, we just get depressed. And then we'll cycle out of it, and then we'll cycle into it. Doesn't have anything to do with the stresses and circumstances of our life. It's a kind of chronic depression. This, too, needs to be treated with a doctor and with medicine, or else we'll find ourselves chronically depressed over and over again. And, of course, a stressful situation like separation, divorce can trigger one of these episodes. So be wise, insightful about what you're going through. Don't get stuck in a clinical depression and go to the point to where life itself seems worthless. Let's describe more unnatural depression, not so much a clinical depression, but that we all have to deal with. First of all, we need to realize that depression is a natural part of our life. Everyone experiences sad feelings, a feeling of depression, and normal depression should not be either avoided or prolonged. By that I mean it's only natural and normal if your relationship is breaking up and it looks like it's going to be over, or it's already clear that it's over, and perhaps you're the one that's not really ready for it. Perhaps your partner's the one that initiated it, and so you find yourself going through depressed feelings. Don't, the first minute you feel it, don't rush to the doctor and try to over-medicate yourself. First of all, recognize that we all have to go through feelings of sadness and depression, and it's a natural part of the healing process. Think also of depression as kind of like a warning sign. It's like if you're driving your car and the oil light comes on. When an oil light comes on, it suggests you're low on oil. So, of course, you need to, perhaps, depending on the nature of it, pull your car over and stop, or very quickly get somewhere where you can put oil in your car. Well, depression is kind of one of those warning things that occur to us. It's like that light goes on. It's warning us that something's wrong. Now, of course, we know we're going through separation and divorce, but it also is telling us that internally, we're not processing and dealing with this in the best way, and perhaps need to change our goals. Sometimes we have unrealistic goals. Or perhaps our goal was, well, we're going to be married happily ever after. And of course, divorce isn't a part of being happy ever after. Or we had some other kind of unrealistic thinking, perspectives, even some of our childish beliefs that, we were not going to be a statistic. We'd never go through divorce. We shouldn't have to do that. And so whatever our beliefs are that now contradict the reality of the circumstances we're in may be a cause for our depression and may call on us to do some rethinking. Also, depression can be anger turned inward. Sometimes we're very angry before we're depressed because things are not working out, because our partner may be abandoning us and abandoning the relationship. And we believe that with some effort and work that this relationship could be made to work in a good way. But of course, you thinking that and your partner not doesn't give you the opportunity to do that. So as a result, we may become very angry. Perhaps we're angry at them and other things. But when we're depressed, we've turned our anger inward. Now we're angry at ourselves. Why did I ever get in this relationship? Why was I stupid? Why didn't I see that she was or he was so upset? And I'm just mad at myself that I didn't deal with this earlier. That perhaps if I had taken their concerns more seriously, this could have been resolved. And so sometimes that's the ultimate source of our depression, is that anger that we now turn on ourselves. And of course, this unresolved anger can oftentimes end up in outbursts of anger because we're frustrated. And then sometimes we just try to bury this anger. And of course, when that happens, you can't really bury it. You simply temporarily have buried it, but it comes out in a variety of other situations. Now no longer necessarily with your ex or with the people that you're originally angry at, but it'll come out in a sullen attitude, depressed feelings, and overreaction to situations and people. So the question becomes, what can we do about our depression? As I said earlier, if you are extremely depressed for 2 or 3 weeks without kind of unrelenting depression with no escape, if you find you really can't think positive thoughts, if you find yourself in a constant loop of negativity in your thinking, that if you try to think something positive, it's like lifting a very heavy weight. You can maybe lift it up off the ground and hold it for 10, 20 seconds, a minute, and then you have to drop it again, and now you're back to negative thinking. If that's the circumstance you're in, you're probably clinically depressed. And so whether you are or aren't, you probably need to see a doctor and seek some medical help, seek their advice on whether you're clinically depressed and whether you need medicine. Of course, obviously, if you have suicidal thoughts over this, you definitely need to seek a medical professional immediately. Another thing in dealing with depression, we need to realize that when we're depressed, we don't really feel like doing anything or being around other people. And so depression can be a very isolating experience. And the more we withdraw from social interaction, the more depressed we get. And then we're depressed again and we withdraw more. And sometimes what happens to depressed people is, they call in sick a lot. They cancel any of their appointments or anything that they perhaps could avoid. They don't open their mail. They It's just a kind of social withdrawal and a withdrawal from life altogether. This can be catastrophic. And so just keep in mind, you can't give up all your relationships with other people. You can't just withdraw from life. If you do, your depression will get worse, not better. And that doesn't mean you need to flit around from one activity to another, constantly filling your life up with just something to do, but you need to have a reasonable amount of social interaction. Develop or find a support group. We have a support group that meets twice a month on a Friday night here at our congregation, Princeton, New Jersey, but I'm sure there are other divorce support groups closer, if you're not close to this location, that you could be a part of. And there's no better group than a support group going through the same thing that you are. They won't get tired of you telling them how you feel, and you can learn from their experience how to better deal with your own separation and divorce. Don't allow your feelings of depression to control you. Some people just they quit their job, they don't pay their bills, and their life gets in a incredibly messed up situation, and now they have something really to be depressed about beyond their initial depression. So don't allow that to happen. Realize that you have to be reasonably connected to other people and try to find that support in good relationships. Also, depression disrupts reasonable, responsible behavior and results in more depression. We have to, I think, be sure that we stay engaged, that we accept our reasonable responsibilities at work or wherever. And it's always important to, I think, set a schedule for your week. Look at your whole week and say, I need to be here, this, I need to do this then. Kind of come up with a schedule that includes taking care of your responsibility and some social interaction, and even plan a fun event. When you're depressed, you're not really interested in fun events, but if you would actually plan one and go through with it, it can be a part of helping you recover from your feelings of depression. Another thing that can be helpful is to analyze how you deal with anger and think through a better strategy, especially if your anger tends to turn inward. So you're mad at people and circumstances, et cetera, and then the next thing you know, you're very mad at yourself, which causes you to feel very depressed. We have to learn to let go and forgive. We can't just stay stuck in a situation and constantly think negatively and in a frustrating way. We need to set realistic goals. Sometimes why we're so depressed is because we believe that somehow we, by ourselves, can hold this relationship together. That if I just did the right thing and said the right thing, this relationship would work. But a relationship is two people, not just one person doing the right thing. So it's unrealistic for you to accept full responsibility for the deterioration or the separation or the divorce that eventually comes out of a broken relationship. Analyze this and accept your reasonable responsibility for it going in the direction it is. Sometimes we need to just analyze our thinking. If you're thinking negative thoughts, get a piece of paper out and write them down or type them up on your computer so that you can get them out of your head and kind of look at what you're thinking. And oftentimes when you look at what you're thinking in your head, you're thinking exaggerated thoughts. I'll never be in a happy relationship again. Nobody can love me. These are exaggerated statements that you need to sometimes get out of your head and look on paper or type it up on your computer and look at it, and when you get it out of your head, you begin to see it for what it is. It's an unrealistic, exaggerated idea. And that kind of negative thinking can cause you to stay stuck in a depression. And of course, if you find that you're struggling with this, again, a professional counselor could be of some help. I guess the bottom line I want to say about dealing with depression is to realize that this is a normal part of our lives. We get depressed. Obviously, if our relationship has broken down, that's one of the most significant things in our life, we're going to feel it. We're going to feel anger about it. We're going to feel depressed. But don't get stuck in your depression without seeking, first of all, social interaction, support groups, and if you need it, medical help. But we always have to remind ourselves of the ultimate truth. This situation, this broken relationship, does not have to define my life. I have something to be hopeful about in the future. And it's this loss of hope sometimes that causes us to be depressed. And so I think it's just good to remember that no matter what our circumstances are, God loves us and God values us. And we should never forget that fact, even when other people don't appear to value or love us. So there is hope for our lives because we are loved. And I pray that you, if you're going through depression, can seek the help that you need so that you can move through this and on to a better place in your life.